Imagine standing on a quiet beach in Virginia and realizing the ground beneath your feet is the first chapter of a story that still decides who lives where, who has what, and who gets heard in America. Because before there was 1776 and independence, here was 1619 and a ship carrying human beings in chains. You've heard the year thrown around in arguments, in headlines, maybe in class, but what actually happened? Who were those people? Where did they come from? And how did one desperate trade on a lonely shoreline help build a system that would shape 400 years of American history? Stay with me, because over the next few minutes, we're not just going to talk about 1619. We're going to walk into it. You'll travel from a kingdom in West Central Africa onto a Spanish slave ship in the Atlantic, and then to a small, hungry English colony called Virginia, to a place they called Point Comfort. There, on a hot August day in 1619, 20 and odd Negroes were taken off an English privateer ship and traded for food and supplies. Not a big battle, no famous speech, just a quiet transaction written in almost casual ink. But if you understand that moment, you'll see America differently. You'll see how a single line in a dusty record book grew into plantations, into laws, into a civil war, into protests you see in the streets today. In this video, you're going to meet real people. A young woman the records call Angela, a couple named Isabella and Anthony, and a child named William, born in bondage, but also born on this land. Their names survived. Most didn't. So as you listen, remember, this isn't just Black history. It's the story of your country, of the air you breathe, the cities you live in, the arguments we're still having. This is how the story of slavery in English America begins. To understand what happened in 1619 to America, you need to understand what happened in Africa first. These people did not begin as slaves. They began as neighbors, parents, fighters, farmers, traders. In the late 1500s and early 1600s, on the west coast of Central Africa, there was a powerful kingdom called Ndongo in what is now Angola. Imagine villages of clay and thatch, women pounding grain, children chasing one another, men working iron, priests pouring libations. People spoke Kimbandu, worshipped their own gods, had their own laws and rivalries. Then the Portuguese arrived with a hunger that would not end. They didn't come alone. They brought muskets, missionaries, and European rivalries pulled into African politics and wars. Some African rulers fought. Some allied. Some tried to play both sides. From these conflicts, tens of thousands of people were captured prisoners of war, victims of raids, families ripped apart. They were marched toward the coast, toward fortress-like trading posts, where Portuguese and other European traders bought and sold them. Imagine a line of people bound at the neck, forced to walk for days. Some died along the way. Some resisted and were killed. Some survived, not knowing where they were going, only that home was getting farther and farther behind. On that coast stood the port of Luanda. From here, Europeans loaded human beings into the holds of ships bound for the Americas. Among them were the ancestors of those who would step onto Virginia soil in 1619. Most spoke Kimbandu. They likely came from Ndongo or neighboring lands. They had names, faiths, loves, enemies, dreams. If you only remember them as slaves, you're seeing them at the end of a story, not the beginning. By the time they reached the Atlantic, they had already survived war, capture, and a deadly forced march. Their American story started long before America, and each step away from their home in Africa brought them closer to a small, struggling English colony that had no idea how much this would change everything. From Luanda, hundreds of African captives were forced onto a ship called the San Juan Bautista, a Spanish slave ship bound for New Spain, what is now Mexico. They were packed into the hold, chained together, lying on rough planks, barely able to move. The air was thick and foul. People were sick, terrified, grieving. The Middle Passage wasn't just a voyage. It was a machine designed to turn people into profit. We don't know exactly how many started the journey. Spanish records later suggest that by the time the San Juan Bautista neared the Caribbean, about 150 people had already died. But this ship's nightmare wasn't over. In the summer of 1619, somewhere in the Atlantic, the San Juan Bautista was attacked by two English privateer ships, essentially government-approved pirates, called the White Lion and the Treasurer. They weren't on a mission to free anyone. They were after cargo. The English ships fired on the Spanish vessel, overpowered her, and stole part of her human load. Between the two English ships, they seized around 50 to 60 enslaved Africans. Think about that. People captured in a war in Africa, sold on the coast, shipped toward Mexico, then stolen again, in the middle of the ocean, traded from one flag to another without anyone ever asking them a single question. And here's where you come in, because this act of piracy, this grab for profit at sea, is what accidentally delivers the first documented group of enslaved Africans to English North America. The White Lion and the Treasurer set a new course. They needed a place to sell what they'd stolen. They knew of a hungry English outpost on the edge of survival, so they turned toward a small colony called Virginia. Soon, the people packed in their holds would see a new shoreline, not home, not freedom, but a place where the logic of slavery would slowly be written into law. The English ship White Lion reaches the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay in August 1619. Ahead lies a small English outpost, a wooden fort, and a few scattered buildings near a stretch of sandy shoreline. They call it Point Comfort. The English colony of Virginia is struggling. Crop failures, disease, conflict with native nations. They're desperate for food and labor. An English officer named John Rolfe Yes, the same man once married to Pocahontas later, writes about what happens. He notes that a Dutch ship, it was actually the English White Lion, but he calls it Dutch, arrived at Point Comfort and brought 20 and odd Negroes who were bought for victuals, for food. So here's the moment. If you could freeze time on that beach in August 1619, you'd see two groups both fighting to survive English colonists on the edge of starvation, and Africans who've already survived a war, a march, a ship, and an attack at sea. On the shore, barrels of food and supplies. On the ship, human beings. We don't know their exact faces, but we know from records that some of their names later appear in Virginia. Angela or Angelo, Isabella, Anthony, others whose names have been lost. One by one, they are led off the ship. They hear a language they don't understand. They see pale-skinned strangers in rough linen clothes and metal helmets. They smell the smoke of unknown fires, the heavy air of a swampy summer. This isn't the grand harbor of a mighty empire. It's a desperate little foothold on someone else's land belonging to indigenous peoples like the Powhatan. Yet this small, rough place is where the lives of these Africans become tied to the fate of what will one day be the United States. The colonists don't write down what the Africans say or feel. They only record what they traded and received. Food goes onto the ship. 20 and odd Africans come off. A quiet transaction, no speeches, no drums. No one realizes that 400 years later, we'd be standing on that same shore try. Here's something many people don't realize. In 1619, Virginia didn't yet have a fully formed system of racial slavery the way we think of it later. The colony already used unfree labor. But it was mostly English and European indentured servants, poor people who signed contracts to work for a set number of years in exchange for passage to America. So when those 20 and odd Negroes arrive, their legal status is murky. Were they indentured servants? Were they enslaved for life? The truth is, the records are unclear, and it might not have been firmly decided yet. We do know some things. Over time, some Africans in early Virginia appear to gain a kind of freedom. There's evidence that a few owned land or even had servants themselves. But that doesn't mean their lives were easy, fair, or secure. Take Isabella and Anthony. They arrive in Virginia, likely as part of those early groups from the White Lion and the Treasurer. They labor for an Englishman named William Tucker. Around 1624 or 1625, Isabella gives birth to a son, baptized with an English name, William Tucker. He is one of the first recorded black children born in the English colonies in North America. Think about that. Just a few years after stepping off that ship, this couple has a child on foreign soil, under foreign laws, in a land that does not see them as equals. In the colonial records, they're barely more than names in a list. But behind those names are long days in tobacco fields, hard labor, new diseases, constant uncertainty. And then there's Angela, sometimes called Angelo in the records. She appears in a 1625 census, listed as working in the household of Captain William Pierce in Jamestown. We don't know her age. We don't know if she had family with her. We only know she survived capture, the Atlantic Point Comfort, and lived long enough to be counted by the English. Here's why this matters to you. These weren't just anonymous slaves. They were the first wave of a black presence in English aim.
The condition of the mother shall be her own.
The arrival of those 20 and odd Africans in 1619 didn't instantly create the system we now recognize as American slavery. But over the next few decades, Virginia's leaders slowly wrote that system into law. First, there were court decisions. In 1640, an African man named John Punch ran away with 2 European indentured servants. All 3 were caught. The European runaways got extra years added to their contracts. John Punch, because he was African, was sentenced to servitude for life. No law had clearly said that before, but this decision drew a line. Blackness could mean lifelong bondage. Then came the 1660s and 1670s. In 1662, Virginia passed a crucial law. A child's status free or enslaved would follow the status of the mother, not the father. This broke from English tradition, where a child usually followed the father. Why change it? because enslaved women were being exploited and raped by enslavers. If the child followed the father, many mixed-race children would be legally free. By tying status to the mother, any child born to an enslaved woman would also be enslaved, even if the father was white, even if he was the enslaver himself. Think about what that means. The law turned women's bodies into tools for reproducing slavery. Over time, more laws followed. Africans and their descendants were increasingly treated as property chattel that could be bought, sold, inherited, mortgaged. Baptism no longer guaranteed any chance at freedom. Interracial marriage was banned. Free black people, where they existed, faced growing restrictions. By the early 1700s, Virginia had a full legal code that made racial slavery a central part of its economy and society. And it all grew on the ground broken in 1619, when those first Africans were brought to Point Comfort. That beach trade didn't look like a revolution, but it planted a seed. Across the 1600s, through decisions like John Punch's sentence and laws like the 1662 statute, that seed grew into a racial caste system that would last for centuries. When you hear arguments today about inequality, policing, housing, education, they're not just about the present. They're about laws and choices that turn people into property and then pretend that was normal all along. For the people who stepped onto that beach in 1619, we don't have diaries. We don't have letters. We don't have their own written words. Their voices were mostly erased from the official record. What we do have are fragments. A line in John Rolfe's letter, a name in a 1625 census, Angela. A baptismal record, William Tucker. Scattered mentions of Africans working, living, sometimes resisting. It's like trying to reconstruct a song when you only have a few notes. Historians dig through archives in Virginia, Spain, Portugal, England. They compare ship logs, tax records, legal cases. They find a Spanish list from the San Juan Bautista that mentions captives taken by English ships. They match dates, numbers, locations. That's how we know those 20 and odd Negroes almost certainly came from that hijacked Spanish slave ship and from the war-torn lands of Ndongo. So when you hear people argue about 1619, about what it means for America's story, remember this. Behind every debate are real human beings whose lives were barely considered worth writing down. In recent years, people have returned to Fort Monroe, the modern site near Old Point Comfort, to remember them. Descendants of enslaved people, historians, local families, they gather on the shore, they call out names, they pour libations. They stand where those ships once anchored and try to fill the silence with honoring instead of erasure. Some look out at the water and wonder if their own ancestors might have been on that ship, on that beach, in that moment. We may never know each individual story, but we can choose whether to treat 1619 as a footnote or as the beginning of a chapter we're finally ready to read honestly. So why should you care about a ship you've never seen, a beach you may never visit, and people whose names you mostly don't know? Because the world you live in was built on choices that started there. The idea that blackness could mean permanent bondage. The idea that a child could inherit slavery from their mother. The idea that some people's suffering could be turned into someone else's wealth and then written into law. Those ideas didn't just vanish when slavery ended on paper. They echo in school systems, in neighborhoods, in wealth gaps, in whose stories get told and whose don't. Understanding 1619 doesn't mean ignoring 1776. It means refusing to tell America's story with missing pages. It means seeing that freedom and unfreedom grew side by side. On one shore, people talked of liberty and self-government. On another, just miles away, people were traded for food and labor. Both are America. If you've watched this far, you've already taken a step most people never do. You've tried to really see the beginning. Now the question is, what do you do with it? Do you let it be just another tragic story? Or do you let it change how you listen, how you vote, what you teach your kids, which voices you believe? This isn't just Black history. It's your country's origin story, and you're living in its next chapter. So keep learning. Ask harder questions. Talk about 1619 when others are silent. And if you want more deep dives into the histories that still shape your life today, hit subscribe. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. And tell us in the comments what part of this story stayed with you. Because remembering is the first step toward writing a different future. The history that began with 20 and odd, unnamed people on a lonely beach is still being written by you. Every time you choose to learn, to remember, to tell the full story of where this country came from, you're pushing back against centuries of silence. If this journey through 1619 opened something for you, don't let it stop here. Subscribe for more deep, honest histories. Share this video with someone who only learned half the story. And drop a comment with one question you still have, because the more we ask, the clearer our future becomes.